Now, tonight's next award is the second National Journalism Prize, proudly hosted each year by the Melbourne Press Club. It's the Harry Gordon Australian Sports Journalist of the Year Award. It recognises excellence in sports journalism across all codes and all regions of Australia. This is the sixth time we have presented the award that honours the memory of Harry Gordon, one of the finest foreign correspondents, sports writers and editors of his generation. A very special welcome to Robin Carter, Harry's daughter-in-law, and to Sarah and Scott Gordon, Harry's grandchildren, who are in the audience with us tonight. Please welcome Sarah to the stage to announce and present the award. And please also welcome Chair Judge of the award, Andrew Rule, to the stage to announce the finalists.
I know, if you remember the 70s, you weren't there. But I clearly recall meeting a tall, dark-haired young man in the press box at Princes Park back in 1979, just in the decade. His name was Greg Baum, and back then he worked for that brave little paper we heard about earlier tonight with Colin Duck, the Sun News Pictorial. Baumie was barely old enough to vote when I met him in that press box that day, but he was calm and serious and had a sort of a gravity to him. He was also a gun reporter, and he still is. To use a cliche that he'd never stooped to, Greg has been an ornament to the profession for 40 years. This year, and every other year, he's shown complete mastery of every part of sports writing. His story on Alison Wright broke the uneasy silence around sex abuse in sport. His story on Rafael Nadal shows how sporting greats allow themselves to be prostituted by sports marketers, and his deadline reporting is always world class. But Greg isn't the only evergreen performer on this Gordon shortlist, a remarkably deep shortlist which was very difficult to get to because there were just so many good entrants. Belinda Hawkins has been one of Australia's finest broadcast journalists for decades. Belinda's Marlian Pickett package is an uplifting story of redemption and relationships. It's just beautifully made. It's lump in the throat stuff. It moves you as much the second time you see it as the first time, and I think that is the finest test of any story. People like Greg Baum and Belinda Hawkins are an inspiration for the rising stars of the next generation. In 2020, Russell Jackson has stamped himself a brilliant talent with a compelling and memorable story, in fact, two stories, about historic racism in football. Robert Muir's ordeal at St Kilda in the 70s, and of course, more recently, Harishe Lumumba's story at Collingwood. They are two of the biggest stories of the year for a very good reason. But Russell has other tricks, other arrows in his quiver. His Dean Jones obituary, done on deadline, was in the Baum class for quality under pressure. But, ladies and gentlemen, it's not all about Melbourne in the Harry Gordon. Julian Linden of the Daily Telegraph is one of the best and fairest sports writers in the business. Julian has produced a cracker collection of features, notably the haunting and heartbreaking story of the talented but doomed Russian-born skater Katya Alexandrovskaya. I almost got it. It's a human story that transcends sport. It's absolutely superb work in a bumper year. And now, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to thank my fellow judges Louise Evans and Mary Gearan and hand over to Harry Gordon's granddaughter Sarah to announce the winner.
Thank you, Andrew. And the 2020 Harry Gordon Australian Sports Journalist of the Year is Julian Linden, The Daily Telegraph.
The judges selected Julian Linden's folio from a field strong in quality and numbers. That Linden's stories were well written is a given in a category that attracts some of journalism's most polished writers. But his work impressed with its other qualities. It broke new ground, it was bold and genuinely investigative. The panel praised Linden's fearless investigation of the death of a teenage Olympic skater and his probing of dysfunctional hockey ruse management. His Tokyo Olympics story displayed knowledge and insight about the games behind the games. We believe Harry Gordon would approve his grit as well as his grace.
Thank you. For me, it's such an honour, honestly, above and beyond anything I ever expected. I only ever met Harry very briefly, many years ago, around the Sydney Olympics, but as a sort of an Olympic junkie, he was always sort of the giant in my eyes because of his standing in Olympic journalism. So to get an award named in his honour is very humbling and too much. Look, I was blown away to be included as a finalist alongside Belinda and Russell and Bormy, who, one of the great sports writers in Australia, all three of them. It was that was fantastic and very proud. I've been sort of plodding away, I guess, as a journalist for about 30 years. Not sure I've really worked things out. I guess the only thing I've worked out this year is that in the last 12 months is really how lucky we are to be in this industry. I mean, COVID reinforced how important sport is to the lives of so many people, but it also hasn't been very kind to sports journalists. We all know a lot of people who lost their jobs. For me, I guess the postponement of Tokyo was a bit of a call to action, and I think it would have been something that Harry would have resonated with. I write a lot of stories about athlete well-being, and so I started sort of digging around into the struggles that they were facing, and we uncovered quite a lot of shocking stories which our readers took to, particularly with female athletes, and that became a big focus for me and still is. I'd like to thank all our editors at The Telegraph. I still can't believe that they put figure skating on the front page in the middle of footy season. And especially like to thank one of my colleagues, Jessica Halloran, works at the Oz, who worked with on that story, who always reminded me that it's the athlete is the heart of the story and not the officials. I think Harry would have agreed with that sentiment. I think he would have really been appreciative of people covering the Olympics. There's not enough of us in that space anymore. Also covering women athletes. So finally, thank you very much to the Melbourne Press Club for putting on nights like this. It's really fantastic. And finally, just a very quick shout out to my wife and kids who aren't here, but they've put up with me for 25, 30 years in this industry. They've tolerated and sacrificed so much and allowed me to never have to get a real job. Thank you.
Congratulations again. Brilliant work. Straight down the stairs and then to the right for a photo. Thank you, Sarah and Andrew. And congratulations again to the 2020 Harry Gordon Australian Sports Journalist of the Year, Julian Linden. The Melbourne Press Club is also proud to administer Michael Gordon Journalism Fellowship Program, which is now in its third year. The initiative honours the legacy of Michael, who was a brilliant journalist and a friend to many people in this room. Through the fellowships, we provide grants for social justice journalism projects, funding bold and impactful reporting that is increasingly difficult to do in the current media landscape. More than $80,000 has been awarded so far to fund valuable journalism projects.